All right, so yeah, during the interview, essentially you'll just be looking at me.
Okay.
Conversational, super straightforward.
Okay.
But right now I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell me what class you just taught. And I want you to talk directly to the
So you're
camera.
talking like grade level wise? Or?
Yeah, just what grade level and just your name, just directly to the
Okay.
lens.
Okay. My name is Mary Keller, and I teach 7th grade math.
Awesome.
Is that all you
That's
wanted?
it. That's
Okay.
all we need. Okay. So let's start out with the first section here. We want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior knowledge and skills? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it? Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
So this lesson was actually a review lesson because proportional relationships are a critical area for 7th grade according to the Common Core standards. We already discussed them back in September and October, but I always feel when it's a critical area, you need to come back to those. So yesterday, my students took a pre-assessment entitled Getting Things in Proportion, where basically it gave me an idea of what they remembered about proportional relationships and some things that perhaps I needed to highlight today during the lesson that were misconceptions that they were still having. The next lesson following this one is going to be looking at graphs and how graphs show proportional relationships in certain ways, just like tables do. So they'll take the same tables they use today and graph them and look for the commonalities among graphs of relationships that are proportional and are not.
Excellent. Talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
Okay, so the standard that I used in today's lesson was ratio and proportion standard A.2a. And it basically asks students to decide whether two quantities are in a proportional relationship, either by testing equivalent ratios in tables or by graphing and looking at the graph. That is a lot to do in 52 minutes, so I decided to kind of break that standard down a little bit and focus just on the table part today. And then, as I said, I'm going to, and at the following lesson, really look at the graph part of that. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified, and how do you plan for this?
Okay. Core action 2 is basically, hold on, I need to read this for a minute. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to remember what indicators. It's like, oh my God. Without looking at them. But it's bad to look down, right, when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, you can take your time.
Okay.
Shorten it up, whatever.
Okay. Okay. So the core action 2 indicators that I really feel this lesson exemplified was B, C, E, and F. Core action 2 basically talks about the instructional practices that are going to allow the students to master the content. And one of the big keys is the questioning that the teacher is going to do during the lesson. So one way I planned for that is when I was looking at my lesson plan, I thought about, okay, in this part of the lesson, what questions can I be asking them to further their thinking or ask them when they get stuck, which really speaks to indicators B and F. And I also looked a lot at practice time to give to students, which is indicator C. They need a lot of time to practice what we're talking about, but at the same time, it's 52-minute periods. So I really had to strategically plan my lesson to give enough time where we could talk as a class, but then they had enough background knowledge to go ahead and practice. And then, hold on, I got correction 3, which is a totally different one. Okay, that one's easier. Okay. Core action 3 talks about giving students opportunity to engage in the mathematical practices during the lesson. And in my class, we've been focusing specifically on or not just class discussions, but student interactions and partners or table groups. So we established that culture early on, and that was one of my main focuses of this lesson, was to allow students to have that opportunity to not just talk to me, but talk to each other.
All right. So section 2. We are interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your classroom. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
This lesson really focuses on the shift of, well, focus, I guess, because this lesson would not exist without the standard. I looked at the standard first before I even planned this lesson, and I made sure that the lesson followed the standard, and I wasn't trying to make the lesson fit something other than the standard. It had to fit the standard. Second, the coherence about it is the proportional reasoning is a critical area in grade 7. So it is looked at not only with tables and graphs, but later on with similar figures. It's also a critical area in terms of ratios and rates in grade 6. So students had to use what they knew about ratios and rates in order to be able to tell me whether two quantities were in a proportional relationship. This particular standard that I chose, the aspect of rigor was really conceptual understanding, and I could have just asked students to identify proportions by using cross products, but they wouldn't really be conceptually understanding what they were doing. Instead, I gave the students situations that they could relate to and then look for proportionality within those situations.
All right. How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what is different?
Before Common Core state standards, proportional relationships I taught pretty much just through cross products, giving them two ratios, asking them to decide if they were proportional by using cross products or multiplying straight across. And now it's not like that anymore. We have to give them situations. And they have to be able to go back to the unit rate really to decide if the relationship is proportional. And by going back to that unit rate, it gives them that conceptual understanding of what they're looking at, as opposed to just, oh, if I multiply across, it's the same thing.
All right.
The rest of this I knew I couldn't answer before.
Yeah.
I'll bet down.
So section 3 here, student engagement is crucial to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensure that all students have the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. So the first part of this is, how did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics of this lesson, and how do you know?
I feel the students did understand the mathematics of this lesson, and the way that I know that is I allowed them ample practice time working with their partners, and I was able to walk around and ask them questions about their thinking. And one of the big key aspects of what they were practicing was they couldn't just tell me, yes, it's proportional, or no, it's not. They had to tell me how they knew that.
All right. Explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have opportunities to work on grade level content? If all students did not have this opportunity, please explain why.
The biggest piece of differentiation in this lesson was the fact that I gave them time to work with their partner so they could build off of each other's knowledge, and if one was stuck, perhaps they could ask the other partner, I'm having trouble with this, can you help me? All of them were working on the exact same situations and problems because I wanted them to all be at grade level. So I did not differentiate the actual content, just maybe the process and allowing them to talk to each other and discuss with each other and ask questions.
Okay. Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson? what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
Gotta look at the behaviors real fast. Oh, The behaviors that the students best exhibited from Core Action 3 was being able to have conversations with each other about the math, and then also the whole piece about justifying their answers, not just telling me what their answer was, but why they knew they were correct. We have been working on this since the beginning of the year. It's something that we've established this culture where my students know it's okay to talk to each other and not necessarily have it right the first time, but building ideas off of each other and getting things wrong is okay in my classroom. So they're not afraid to have those conversations and attempt to explain their reasoning.
Excellent. Would you like to comment on any of the submitted student work? Was there something that delighted or surprised you?
I was actually pretty delighted about the work that they were doing in their papers. They were really, for the most part, dividing out to try and find the unit rate. Some of them were still kind of stuck on kind of trying to look for the pattern going across as opposed to trying to divide out the unit rate. So looking for that multiplication is 60 times 2 is 120, so 1 times 2 is 2 instead of finding that unit rate. So, but for the most part, I was pleased that they really tried to focus in on finding that unit rate.
All right. Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. So reflecting on this lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
I think what worked really well in this lesson was starting them off with a situation kind of whole class and jogging their memories as to what the unit rate was, how we can tell ratios are equivalent. I don't think that they would have been able to attempt the practice without that. And then I also think that the practice time gave them time to really think for themselves, so that worked well at the same time. Was there something that I should change? I couldn't remember. Was that part of this question?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just what do you think worked well, what didn't?
Yeah. If I could change anything, though, I think I would, and I can't change this at this time, but I would change the amount of time they got to spend time practicing that themselves. Because some students didn't get to every situation themselves. They had to kind of rely on the other students in the class during the whole class discussion at the end. And it would have been nice if they all came to the whole class discussion having looked at every situation individually first.
Excellent. And the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
I don't think so. They did way better than I thought they were going to do. Don't put this on video.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, like I did this fourth period before, and it went way worse. It was nice to have that rehearsal time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, not in this class. If you ask me about fourth period, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that is it. Thank you so much. Do you have maybe just a couple pieces of student work